Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show today. I'm really glad you could join us. So look, if you really want to get the most out of your marketing, you really need to be able to hyper-target whoever it is you're going after. As a matter of fact, not only is that the key to being able to get the right customer in the door, but there's a whole side of it with customer experience and making sure that you could target customers in your specific area to improve that part of your process as well. So with us today is Vlad Edelman. Now, Vlad, actually, if you're looking for someone who's known for improving the customer experience, look no further. Vlad is actually your man. He's been in the restaurant industry for over 10 years and has helped the likes of Ansible, Soapbox Mobile, and ESPN's mobile business increase their CX. In 2014, he founded the game-changing product HEROFI that focused exclusively on creating better customer engagement tools for restaurants. Now, through all of his wins and losses, Vlad continues to look for ways to improve customer experiences with countless different brands. Over the last 5 years, he's built a company that focuses on equaling out the advertising playing field through using modern rules engines, real-time data visualization, and automated content targeting. Vlad's company, Targetable, delivers an incredibly powerful, affordable platform-agnostic advertising engine that allows all retail companies to play like consumer giants. Vlad, welcome to the show today.
Thank you very much, Ty, for having me. It's great to be here. That was a mouthful of an intro, so I apologize for...
It wasn't. I just stumbled over. I just screwed the whole thing up is what ultimately happened.
I
So listen, man, you guys are doing some cool things in Targetable.
Like,
I mean,
where's my diaphragm here? Sorry.
What is the main problem you guys are trying to solve?
Very simple. The fact that ad agencies are prohibitively expensive for small business, right? And so, all of the descriptors of our platform, the data ingestion, the localization, the contextual relevance, all of that describes something much simpler that we use as a tagline to customers, frankly, as opposed to podcast hosts. But in essence, we're a virtualized ad agency, right? And so whether it's creating an ad, flighting the ads, analyzing the ads, our system and platform, does what a $7,500 a month or $10,000 a month retainer with an agency would get you for $150. But more importantly, what we do couldn't have been done, only probably 1 or 2 years ago, because we're accessing data that before hasn't been available at the speed with which we're accessing it. We're using Amazon infrastructure and certain types of capabilities they have to create an AI interface that essentially really thinks of what that ad for that consumer should be on behalf of a retail business. And that's a really important qualifier, which is we're not trying to solve this problem for all business worldwide. That's kind of the classic boil the ocean problem where, there's just too many factors. We're really trying to solve it from the perspective of physical retail, the retail that everybody thinks is now dead, that it's all gone to Amazon, nobody shops in stores anymore. Well, the reality is more than 80% of all of humanity still shop at physical stores as commerce. And so it's far, far away from dead. But it is very, very behind when it comes to marketing tools, very far behind when it comes to the use of real-time data. And then generally just very far behind in the understanding of how to use localized data to create an experience that's contextually relevant to a particular consumer. Because what we do is we essentially take, take the premise of CRM one-to-one marketing, that holy grail pursuit that has been that has been kind of the Indiana Jones crystal skull of advertising as agencies chase this idea that if you can just find those 5 people who want to buy a hamburger, and match them to McDonald's right at the right time, then that's perfect advertising. It's total BS because there's no way to get to those people in a cost-effective way enough, consistently enough for that to be a strategy for Joe Pizza or for anybody else who's on the smaller side, or franchisees of large brands who all function with the same types of limitations. So what we do is very simple. We take in localized data, weather, traffic, sports scores, demographics, psychographics. Are there schools in this area? Are there military bases in this area? And then we build the advertising campaigns and the advertising messaging around the specificity of that physical location. So we don't care who of the people who happen to be around Joe's Burger Shack like burgers. What we know is that people who are hungry at lunchtime when it's lower than 55 degrees out like burgers. And so we're going to time the Facebook advertising, Instagram, and Google advertising that we run on behalf of customers to take advantage of those factors, reaching more people maybe than we want to on a CRM level, but on the other hand, being far more effective at what matters, which is conversion.
So you've referred to this as localization. What is localization?
That's a great question, and a philosophical one that could take a couple of hours. In my opinion, localization, as it applies to advertising, is the process of making a advertising message or a piece of advertising collateral self-aware, right? So there's a difference between a piece of advertising on behalf of, let's say, a sports bar that advertises the fact that there's sports available in this bar, right? That's a nationalized voice. That's a non-localized voice. If it's the same bar, but it's advertising that the Lower Essex Soccer Middle School is available at this bar because it knows that that's the school in the zone that they operate in. That's the school that the kids of their patrons go to, and that's the content that is relevant to the people who go into that bar to see, and a better reason for them to come in. That's localization. So same ad vehicle, same ad type, very different message depending on what that localization data is telling you is relevant to that location.
So much like, and I think back to Uber not being able to exist until we had smartphones with navigation in them, right? Or GPS, because that technology made this possible. You're really talking about a new form of advertising and being able to get really hyper-targeted customers based on a lot of these localized data points, it sounds like. So give me an example. How would this work for, let's say, a restaurant? So how does a restaurant use localized data to be able to run ads in the new way you're describing? And what's the difference compared to how restaurants have always run these ads in the past?
So first of all, I think restaurants in particular, but all of retail, haven't really engaged with local social media nearly as much or as effectively as they could. So, we could start with just doing the basics right is important. But the broader idea here is not that restaurants or that retail hasn't been doing this. As much as, or that this didn't exist, as much as this didn't really exist at the price point where it's feasible for a restaurant or a retailer to do this on a daily basis, over and over again until it produces the results that they're looking for. Because, local transactional advertising, which is what we specialize in, which is Facebook, Instagram, Google, the stuff that is really about creating an action and creating a very direct link to a KPI. So revenue, check size, more people in the place, coming back more often. Those are all very, very tangible transactional goals, not big brand building kind of, Apple style advertising. So, the challenge for them has been pricing. And the reality is that, there's plenty of brands who can afford to do this. CPG brands like Procter & Gamble, Unilever, guys who have, $1.2, $1.4 billion in advertising budgets a year. But the trick has been to see, hey, how do we get this to be, because they have an army of researchers who actually look at zip codes and they look at the data and they try to understand how to tweak that Tide ad to be hyper relevant to that population. Well, that costs tremendous amounts of money, right? And so, the question and our challenge when we were building the tool was, okay, how do we replicate that experience and that outcome without charging or having to charge completely unbelievable amounts of money? And so, when we started to actually build and when we started to deploy, we saw absolute magic happen, right? One good example is Buffalo Wild Wings, which is a chain that has 1,375 locations worldwide, the world's largest sports bar chain. They pour the most beer in the world. And one of our kind of mainstay clients and have been for years. And one of the things they asked us to do is how to create localized relevance for each location based on the sports that are present in that location and the sports content itself, not just anything else, because they're a sports bar. And so what we built on the top of our targetable engine was essentially a product that reacted in real time to sports data as it came in. So we integrated with 38 different sports leagues, but the long and short of it is the locations of Buffalo Wild Wings based in Minneapolis, when the Vikings, the football team, the Vikings scored a touchdown, instantly provisioned a buy one, get one free beer for 15 minutes inside only the Minneapolis locations of that chain. None of the other chains reacted, or reacted only to the teams that were relevant to them, to the Bears in Chicago, to the Giants in New York, and so on and so forth. And so the entire chain started acting as if it understood where its individual locations were and wasn't painting with a national brush, but was painting with a very, very narrow local brush, saying, hey, we know we're a national brand, but we also care about the fact that this DMA, this zip code, this community cares about this sports team and not just sports in general. That's not a passion point. And so that project, earned over $55 million in top line revenue for them for 2018 or 2017, I forget at this point how their accounting works, but in a methodology that they created to test this. So it has very, very material returns when you do it right.
Makes sense. Give me another example. I love that first example. BW3s, you come in, they've got an incentive for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, best football team of all time, as we all know, right? Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they have a special going on where they can get a free beer for the next 15 minutes when they score. A touchdown only happens in my local location here in Tampa, nowhere else. Makes perfect sense. Love it. Give me another example of how this kind of localization can help businesses really hyper target on special offers or promotions for people in the area where it's hyper relative to them, where they're going to be more engaged and respond.
Sure. Well, I mean, there's the easiest answer is there's tons of obvious ways, right? Which we do all the time. So weather-based, right? So, are you marketing ice cream when it's cold and soup when it's hot out? No, you're doing the converse. And a lot of the, and just as an aside, like that sports product that we created for Buffalo Wild Wings, that existed before in the form of a very unique kind of thing that happens in sports bars with bartenders and the cowbell when the local team scores. That idea has always been there. What we took it and we created a technology that let us commercialize and scale that in an automatic way and standardize it. And so that's a lot of what we do. We don't necessarily have to create, or recreate sliced bread. We can go and we can look at behavior and figure out, okay, how do we scale this behavior and how do we automate the administration of this behavior? And so naturally, a lot of places aren't going to be, advertising soup on a super hot day or ice cream when it's freezing out. But how do you systematize that? Well, you create the integration with the inventory, you create the integration with the POS system and the weather data feed, and then you create rules, right? At the end of the day, our engine and a lot of engines that work in this way are rules engines, right? They're if this, then do that engines. And so very simply put, we've created engines in rule sets that say, if it's cold out, if it's under 60 degrees Fahrenheit, market this type of soup. If it's actually under 40, then market this type of soup because it's even heavier and more warmer looking. If it's over 75 degrees, then market this ice cream. If it's over 85 degrees, don't market anything. And so there's a set of rules that can be based off of a lot of these types of promotions. Traffic is a great example. We have access to the Google traffic feed. We know when traffic becomes very, very high around a particular location, and if it has links out to media that allows it to speak to commuters via Google or any other local advertising engine, we can target advertising that is conditional on the traffic, right? And says, hey, why are you sitting in traffic? There's another hour of it before you get out of it. Why don't you stop by and shop for shoes instead? We have a traffic special over here at Skechers, which is one of our clients as well, but stop by here instead and shop for a special promotion today only or traffic only. It allows you to use real-time data and what's actually happening in the locations where these businesses are operating to build real-time promotions around. The promotions are not new. They're buy one, get one free. They're bringing a friend. They're get 20% off. They're the standard mechanics and tools of retail. But the way that they are timed and the way that they are triggered and the way they use real-time data is very, very different. And it's highly effective. It's unbelievable what kind of returns we've seen now when you engage when you time a commercial the right way, or when you make an ad relevant, the difference or the return is staggering.
So can this be used, like if I'm walking through a mall, for example, and I'm walking by a store, can it be used to that effect where I can actually run certain
Sure.
ads to somebody that's even in the general location of the retail store?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And in fact, a lot of this is targeting people who are in the general location of a particular retailer. One of the things that we really focus on is preventing our customers and clients from over geo-targeting, meaning that a lot of less experienced customers who get onto Facebook's, ad platform or Google's ad platform get very starry-eyed about all the audiences that they can acquire, and they start to buy audiences that are 25, 35, 50 miles away from their location. Well, I don't care if you make the best pizza in Indianapolis, nobody is going to drive from, Duluth to get it. Right. And so I know that's in two different states, but the reality is that we use geographic location all the time, and it really depends on also what the message is. Right. We've got a great example where we ran a fairly complex set of campaigns for Skechers, which is the shoe company, but it was based entirely on individual store performance. And so, for example, if a store number 3699 that's in Tarzana, California, if they are not hitting their daily financial goal, revenue goal by like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we built a system that instantly triggers a save the day kind of response, meaning they push ads out inside the malls that they're in, featuring an instant flash sale, buy one, get one free pair of shoes, to help them react to what's happening in the business then and there, and not necessarily a business quarter later, a month later, even a week later when it doesn't matter anymore. And that's a very novel idea for retail, to react in real time, to be able to address a problem as it's happening. That's not something that retail has been able to do ever.
No, and it's really insane what you're describing. I mean, it's insane. I mean, like you said, that I love that example of a business that doesn't hit a revenue mark by a certain point, ads deploy to then help to local people that are in that area, bring them in to help them hit the revenue goal. That's fantastic. I could think of a million ways that this could actually be used. That being said,
but another great example is movie theaters, where we're monitoring occupancy rates. We did something similar with MGM, where we're monitoring open table and occupancy rates of restaurants. You can trigger, again, it's a rules engine. So it could be revenue, but it could also be fill rates, occupancy rates, all sorts of things that trigger marketing. So you're not wasting marketing. Like, so much of marketing is wasted, right? I mean, it's the famous, like, I don't know which half of my marketing is working. I know half is working, but I don't know which half. It's really a joke that speaks to a much bigger issue underneath it all, which is the lack of attribution, the lack of accountability in most advertising. And so, bringing that accountability into the space like we do, and being able to finally address, hey, use your marketing dollars when and on the things that matter, not just blanketly and hoping that, whoa, when the problem happens, we're also advertising. So, it's kind of working.
And I appreciate you giving that insight, because like I said, there's a million ways that I could really think of this being very effective for small businesses. What social platforms are they using to be able to push these ads?
Facebook, Instagram, Google.
So if we talk about Facebook, Instagram, Google, give me an idea how this works, because we run a bunch of Facebook ads, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but I don't know of anything like you're describing where Facebook ads could be triggered based on certain parameters. So how does something like this work in the context of Facebook ads?
So it's not the Facebook ads or the Facebook engine that triggers it, it's targetable, right? Because you haven't seen it, because we haven't existed until about 7 months ago, and we're the only ones in this. We kind of created our own category of virtualized ad agency. But it works very simply. You sign on to targetable.com and you make an account. We pull in all the data that matters about you and your business, because as you log into Facebook, you give us the permissions to pull in all the data about Facebook likes and dislikes and everything. But we go further. We then gather into what we call a rich data profile: your Yelp reviews, your Open Table, your TripAdvisor, your anything out there that helps inform our system about your business and what matters to your business. And then what the system does is it starts to automatically create advertising campaigns for you in an Instagram like feed. It's actually really cool. So our biggest kind of design thing that we figured out is we wanted it to be very accessible, in the antithesis of how Facebook's ad platform looks, which is such a nightmarish like Excel from 1988 kind of thing that's going on in there. And so we created this super easy way to interact with it, which is like you just scroll and there's ad campaign, ad campaign, ad campaign, ad campaign, targeting different demographics, targeting different ideas. If the system saw that you are very family friendly, based purely on the fact that it's doing a natural language analytics search around your reviews and things like that, you are not doing anything to do this. It may suggest family campaigns. It may suggest campaigns targeting children. It may suggest campaigns just like the one I described that are targeting sports teams. But the key is that the system learns about you through time. And so it's one thing that we use a lot of data to create ads that then are highly effective at the baseline level. But as we work our way with you through time, the system gets to learn and know what works for your business better and better and better. And so by doing that, and then also having the luxury of comparing you to the other 100 businesses that look like yours inside our system, we managed to create outcomes that are truly amazing.
It almost sounds like artificial intelligence. I mean, it sounds like you're deploying ads based on strategies. The system is learning what works. It's adapting it, throwing out what doesn't, and fine-tuning what's working.
That's exactly right. I mean, at the core of our system is an AI algorithm that is very advanced.
Sure. And then that makes it significantly more effective. So why has it not been affordable for you? Say this has been out for years. Big companies use it. Small companies don't. So what's been the barrier before where this kind of tech was just more expensive to deploy?
Because it wasn't tech, it's humans, right? So it's never existed as a technology. Let me clarify that. The results that we're getting and the actions we're taking have historically been taken by humans, right? And so if you are the size of a Procter and Gamble, you can afford to spend $1 million a month on research and R&D and targeting and all sorts of other stuff and every kind of fancy bells and whistle data feed that you can think of. But if you're Joe's Pizza Shop, you're not going to be able to afford that kind of spend, right? You're barely spending, $2,000-$3,000 a month on advertising. And so, what's never been available is a cost-efficient, scalable, highly effective version of this, which is what we created. But getting to the same result has been possible by just spending enough money.
You mean they were basically deploying labor to do all this stuff and manually calculate, manually figure out, and now you've got tech and AI that does it for you.
And the nice thing about tech and AI is it's not just faster, it's better, because it doesn't come in late, it doesn't come in sad, it doesn't get to work hungover. Like humans are fundamentally flawed at data analytics because that's better done by robots, right? I mean, that's data crunching and data analytics are things that AIs will always do a lot better than humans because that's how they're built. They're built to calculate.
What are some other ways to be able to target? And you've talked about definitely a handful, right? We've talked about weather. We've talked about being in the location of the retail store. We've talked about, deploying ads when revenue is low or where you need to make certain revenue marks for the day. You have some of the top of the mind examples of how you guys are using this and what it's doing for industries?
One easy one is geographic or topographical information. So we focus a lot on, hey, are there military bases within 5 miles of your retail location? Have you tried putting together a military special? Have you, those kinds of things. Are you within 2 miles of a school? What kind of school? Are you close to houses of worship? So, very rarely do businesses really fully understand all of the other businesses that function around it, or the aspects of the community that function around it. And so that's a really popular one. Targeting by demographic is really kind of bread and butter, but people haven't done it efficiently for a long time. And so let's say four locations of a similar chain brand can be 2 miles apart. We have instances in Portland where we have a chain that has locations that are literally less than 2 miles apart in a city, all four of which have completely different audience demographics. And so their ads are targeted a completely different way. There's also the curious kind, and this is the reverse. This is not the type of data we use all the time. It's the kind of data we run into rarely. But we had a client who was functioning inside of the Portland airport, and out of a bunch of locations, this is a similar place to Buffalo Wild Wings, but not Buffalo Wild Wings. But they couldn't figure out why their location was selling an inordinate amount of tequila when the rest of the chain sells beer for the most part. And we actually did the research and figured out that it was because they were next to a gate in the airport that had a daily flight to Cabo San Lucas from Portland. And so that kind of data, now, is that a reasonable piece of data to expect a business to get to understand and to program around? No, but it's that kind of data that gets surfaced when you have an AI sweeping all the data constantly to understand aberrations like a tequila sale that's super high, or to understand patterns, which is at the end of the day what AI really is. Artificial intelligence is just pattern recognition, kind of elevated to a higher and higher level. And so when you look at patterns around the physical world, whether it's military bases or flights to Cabo San Lucas or high schools that happen to be around the corner, there's an endless amount for you to program your advertising around that'll make it much more efficient than you are today.
Yeah, this is so interesting. I mean, I could just see how it really refines advertising in general. What kind of ad budget does somebody need to even dive into something like this?
A lot less than most people think. So $5 a day will get you started. $10 a day is preferable.
So
But
normal social media
we
spend.
call it a latte a day. Yeah. I mean, it's really, if you cut your Starbucks habit in half and invest the rest in social media, then you'll be good to go.
Are you usually deploying multiple strategies for a business for them to initially test and see what works?
It depends on the business. So, to the question you just asked, part of it is, it's not just, our fee, it's also there's the media spend of having to buy enough media to actually test a strategy. So absolutely, for brands that can afford it and can take advantage of the results of two different types of media strategies, we do it. For the most part, we usually start businesses off with one or two that are very targeted, and to see kind of how people react and how to baseline them essentially. And then after that, we'll start working with more of a A/B testing scenario where the ad itself and the strategy is going to be the same, but the wording is going to be a little different. The images will be a little bit different, and it's going to A/B test that ad strategy for them. Again, another thing that ad agencies, do, but very expensively do, the system does essentially automatically by A/B testing ads within their own category.
Is someone coming to you and telling you the strategies they want to test? Or is this something where they're telling you the goal of what they want to get and you guys are suggesting the strategies to deploy?
It really depends. Like we have one group that we work with, Branded Strategic, really awesome. They're actually an investor in our company, but they own 22 restaurants in New York and Manhattan, and places that are really well known and have been around forever. And we just onboarded them. The reason I bring it up is because it was really revealing, which is they have 22 restaurants. Each one has a history, and each one has a local history and memory with its consumer base and everything else. And so, we're not going to come in and tell a restaurant like that or a restaurant group like that anything really new about their restaurants. Where we can really inform it is show them new things about the communities that they serve, and help them tweak the message, not necessarily recreate the message from complete scratch, if that makes sense. So, for most of the restaurateurs that are more, more savvy, have been doing this a fairly long time and have an established brand, we're really coming in and modifying. We're not ripping out a bunch of stuff and starting them from zero. We're taking what they're doing, which is usually solid, and making it a lot more relevant locally, by wrapping that localization around it.
Vlad, I love what you're doing, man. Where can everybody go to be able to get more information?
Just targetable.com. All of our promotions, all of our incentives are there, as well as a video that we just produced that I think does a really good job of showing how the system works without having to sign up. And don't forget, we're a month-to-month service, so there's no contracts, there's no commitments. It's $149 a month, and if you don't like it, you leave.
Anything else that everybody watching and listening today should know about Targetable or about localization and in this kind of new way of advertising? I'm calling it a new way of advertising because realistically, this was done manually. Now it's using tech to do something really cool that I've never seen done before. So anything else that anybody should know that maybe we didn't get a chance to dive into?
It works. It works like gangbusters. So instead of having to create new like ad terms that obscure failures, I call it, like, that we're impacting some weird social quotient score, but no new money is actually walking in the door because your ads are failing. We drive 10% revenue gains for some of our customers on a monthly level, which for a restaurant making 750,000 a year, that's 75, 80 grand on the back of a less than $5,000 a year spend. For Nathan's, which is a big national hot dog and kind of comfort food chain, we drove 17x the efficiency of their dollar versus what they were spending on radio and Valpak and all of these blow-ins and stuff, so that we're now about to onboard their whole chain, hopefully. So we're talking about things that work in the most obvious, easy to understand way. More money in your pocket on a monthly level, more people through your doors, bigger checks. Those are the things that we focus on, and that's what localization really drives. So if you're not seeing that return, you're not doing it right, or somebody's just ripping you off.
Vlad, thanks for coming on with us today.
Thank you, Ty. It's been a pleasure.
So make sure, everybody, that you visit targetable.com. That's targetable.com. A lot of stuff here, a lot of cool resources, examples. You can even get a demo to see how this whole thing works. But look, this has been the evolution of what's happened with marketing. As Vlad said, back in the day, you used to just try to target a demographic. No idea if they're interested in your product or service. I mean, there was just nothing to be able to really base it on. Then we kind of started to get into Facebook a little bit more. You can start to target on niches and target on what they like, etc. This is like the brand new way that will carry us into the future of advertising, using geo-targeting, using all these other things like localization and localized data to be able to really hyper-target somebody that gives you the best chance of actually buying your product or service. Bottom line, it maximizes your dollar. You get more customers that probably, I would imagine, spend more money as a result of bringing the right person in the door, and bringing the right person in the door at the right time as well. Really cool stuff. So make sure you visit targetable.com. That's targetable.com for more information on using localized data to blow your results out of the water when it comes to advertising. So make sure you visit targetable.com.